Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Liz Fernandez with APHIS Training, and I'd also like to welcome you to today's webinar. Our speaker today is Dr. Tiffany Lee. Dr. Lee currently serves as a Director of Regulatory and Scientific Affairs for the North American Meat Institute, where she provides veterinary consult and informed scientific analysts to its members on many issues, including food safety, new technologies, research priorities, and animal health and welfare. She is also a staff liaison for the Meat Institute's Animal Welfare Committee. Dr. Lee earned her Master of Science and Doctorate of Veterinary Medicine degrees from Kansas State University in 2012, after which she practiced veterinary medicine in a mixed animal clinic in Colorado. In 2017, she earned a PhD in pathobiology from Kansas State University, where her dissertation focused upon beef cattle health and welfare. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Lee.
All right. Thank you, Liz. Appreciate that introduction. And I appreciate all of you for being on this webinar today. I hope I fulfill the needs for preparation for this ASF exercise that's really geared towards packers. I'm pretty excited to have the opportunity to really have a good, robust discussion on policy surrounding foreign animal disease and how that might be handled in the pork packing industry. So with that, we'll get started. I'm just going to give an overview of the pork packing industry at this point. We'll talk a little bit about biosecurity and some relevant authorities that the pork packing industry is under, so falls under. So we'll get started here. There we go. So pork packing in the United States, we slaughter a lot of pigs and we produce a lot of pork. You can see here on the graph, on the slide here, 2019 FSIS PHS data, PHIS data. On the blue line represents the commercial hog slaughter for 2019, and the red line represents 2020. You've got your months on the x-axis and your number of head on the y-axis. And take a look. I'd like you to notice this is a lot of pigs. This is 13,000 head. So we all know that means millions. I want to kind of point out just kind of what happened earlier this year. I think we all are very, very familiar with it. We started out pretty high compared to last year. In March, we were doing pretty well, and then April and May hit, and we fell off kind of by a lot. So we have really rebounded quite a bit, and again, we are up over 2019 numbers. For right now, over the summer, we were up over 2019 numbers, and we're climbing again. So I hope that we have recovered quite a bit from, those April and May months that were pretty tough for some people. So I just want to give you an idea of, how much this industry does, and as we keep going, just keep the numbers in mind. So we're going to go on a little tour of a pork packing plant. We're going to start really from the very beginning when those pigs enter the premises, and we're going to go to the very end when we see bacon and various byproducts. So here we've just got an example of a plant, excuse me, unloading docks at a plant. These trucks come in, sometimes they've got flats in them depending on the weather, and back up and go ahead and unload those pigs. And the pigs come out, you'll see this half door here. That's so the pigs cannot see these employees that stand right here as they get off of the truck. Here's another example of just a different kind of unloading facility. And I want to point out that, we've got this half door when they unload, and the reason that they have employees standing here is so that they can apply a tattoo to each pig that comes into this facility. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that right now we are talking about market pigs. So, those pigs that are 250, 280 pounds that are coming in that were raised specifically for meat. I'll touch on a little bit, I'll touch on other classes of pigs a few times, and we can certainly address questions if there are any, but I want to make sure that y'all understand that the focus here right now is market pigs. So these market pigs come in, and every single one of them, even this one that looks like it might be missed, they're going to get this tattoo. And that tattoo, you'll see, is different for each lot of pigs that comes in. And the tattoo helps you to trace that lot back to its farm of origin. So if there ever was a foreign animal disease outbreak, this tattoo is very, very, very important. And the reason that we have tattoos, you'll see this pig doesn't have any ear tags or anything like that. The reason that they are tattooed rather than having ear tags, just like, you know, say beef cow or beef steer, is because they go through a tumbler, and we'll take a look at that. But when they go through the dehairing process, pretty, you know, rough and tumble, and we don't want those ear tags to fall out. You know, that would defeat the purpose of having that individual ID or the lot ID all the way through the process. So the reason that we tattoo is so that, you know, that ID will stay with that pig throughout the process. So there's just an example of the tattoo on the actual carcass after it's come out of the tumbler or the dehairer. So this is, you know, standard kind of pork plant lairage situation. These pigs actually, these pens actually extend out quite a bit here. They've all got a lot of room, but you'll see they like to pile up their pigs. So you'll see the pens with the solid sides here, or, you know, maybe they'll be separated by a gate. There's walking alleys here. And, you know, every facility is really kind of different in their setup, whether it be lairage or you know, unloading or various issues. But everything is very, very, it's very similar, but again, it can be different. I know that sounds kind of, you know, it doesn't sound right, but it's very true. And we'll actually see some differences in, you know, the whole facility in some subsequent slides. So this again is lairage. This is a big long pen. Most of them are just kind of big long pens, and again, they usually like to pile up because, you know, they're pigs. So once the pigs have been rested, and you know, the resting time kind of depends on the plant, but most pigs are rested for at least a little bit so they can calm down, makes the meat quality better. But once they are rested, they are moved through various alleys, and in this particular plant, and in most large plants, they are moved to the CO2 stunning. I've listed Butina here because that's really the name brand of most of the CO2 stunning systems. So that's just basically Butina is kind of CO2 stunning system. And they are loaded into this Butina. And this Butina basically is a series of gondolas that, you know, anywhere from 5 to 7, usually 7 to 8 pigs can fit in, depending on the size. Again, it's going to be plant dependent as far as, you know, how many pigs can fit. But these gondolas go down into a pit, you know, 30 feet, sometimes a little bit different, but they go down into a pit that's basically filled with CO2, and it's about 92% CO2, and that is what stuns these pigs. So they really, it's not necessarily, it's not asphyxiation. These pigs, they are stunned because of a CO2 buildup, and they pass out, and they become unconscious because of the CO2. So there's the Butina door being closed, and again, that basket, that gondola will drop down into that pit. And then comes up on the other side. So on the other side of this is where they're loaded, and now they come out on this side, and they kind of roll out onto this conveyor belt here. Now, I want to just point out a little bit of a difference. Not every plant will have a CO2 stunning system. And so some plants use electric stunning. And most, if you're going to use electric stunning, most of them are going to do a prong at the head and a prong, what we call at the heart, called head-to-heart stunning or head-to-cardiac stunning. And this produces a grand mal seizure and renders the pig unconscious. And most of the time when you're using the head-to-heart stunning, it will actually produce a seizure that will kill the animal as well. So I wanted to point that out. Some plants, especially, maybe some older plants that don't necessarily have the capacity to install a CO2 stunning system, will still use the electric system. They work, pretty similarly. The outcome, obviously, is the same, and that is rendering every animal unconscious before it is, cut or hoisted or bled. There we go. And after, now this, we're switching back to the CO2 stunning system here. After the pigs are rendered unconscious, they go along that little conveyor belt and they are shackled. So basically a shackle is put around one of the legs. We'll see that. You'll see the employees taking those shackles, and these shackles run up this way, and they're put on the shackle so that they can basically be hoisted, so that they can be put on this line where they are bled. And so this employee has a very, very sharp knife. He cuts the skin and he cuts into those blood vessels, the carotid and the jugular, so that they can have a good solid bleed, make sure that we get all the blood out, not just, because, not just because that is what ultimately kills the animal, but we do like to have all the blood out, so it's a little bit cleaner process. And, of course, the blood is a byproduct in itself, and we'll talk a little bit more about how that blood is used. This is just a picture of these pigs. They're shackled here. They have already been cut by that person who is bleeding them, and they will run along this line and bleed out and into this trough. After these pigs are bled out, they spend a little bit of time on that bleed rail, they are dipped into a scald tank. And this is hot water, anywhere from 132 to maybe up to 140 degrees. But what this process does is it kind of loosens that hair, because we don't want the hair on that carcass anymore. So this kind of gets it nice and moist and loosens or opens up those hair follicles. So these are the pigs going into the scald tank. This is the pigs coming out of the scald tank. You can kind of see that hair there. It's a little more visible after being in that scald tank. So after they come out of that scald tank, they go through that tumbler that I mentioned. Basically the dehairing process. They're tumbled, and it basically removes all the hair just by, kind of trauma, I guess. But you'll see they come out pretty naked. So they're positioned in a correct position, and they are hooked rather than on just having the shackle on the one leg. They've got it on both legs. It's easier to open up the carcass there. After they go through the dehairing, they go through the singer. This makes sure that all the hair is removed. It's also kind of helpful on a food safety side. Obviously this is very, very, very hot. It's going to help remove some of the bacteria anyway that might be on those carcasses. But the primary reason for going through the cinder is to remove the rest of the hair that might still be on that carcass. So we've gone through the cinder here, and then we basically, start the reverse of an assembly line. Assembly line, you put things together. In a slaughter plant, it's kind of the opposite. You kind of take things apart. So here is just kind of an initial cut to remove the head. You're farther along in the process here. And, of course, those heads go for inspection. FSIS, the Food Safety and Inspection Service, is in these plants at all times, doing inspections on the head, on the gut table, and, of course, the final carcass inspection as well. We'll talk a little bit more about FSIS activities in subsequent slides in this presentation. So after the head is removed, we're going to split the carcass right down the middle. I will tell you that some of these pictures that I'm using are a little bit dated, or they're from plants that might be a little bit older. A lot of the new plants have robotics that help, perform these activities, because this is an important step. The last thing that you want to do is cut into this belly and rupture, say, an intestine or rupture a belly. So, these employees are very, very good at what they do. They're very, very skilled. But sometimes, in the newer plants, they have been, we've put in robotics rather than have the employees doing this. It just eliminates a little bit of variability there. This is just another picture of that carcass splitting. You'll see they're removing some skin, but they also, this person will also make a cut right down the middle here. And the reason that we want to make a cut right down the middle, of course, is to remove all the internal organs. Basically everything but the kidneys. Kidneys come out when we eviscerate these animals. So you'll see these are just kind of the empty carcasses. You'll see the kidneys are still there, but those are also inspected by FSIS as well at the final inspection. This is a picture. I apologize to everyone. I do not have a picture of the actual gut table, but basically how it works is the carcasses are hanging over a table that's basically a big conveyor belt, and the internal organs are cut out, and they are put on the gut table, and basically, everything is sorted, and that is when FSIS does its inspection of the internal organs. This is a picture of some of the internal organs that have been pulled for further inspection by FSIS. So maybe an inspector on the line saw something, they didn't like, maybe some purple guts or maybe some inflammation. And so these internal organs are put into trays for further inspection by the agency. Same here. This is the pluck, the liver. Unlike with beef, the liver is left with the lungs and the heart here with pigs. Again, this is not on the gut table. This is actually on the line for further inspection from FSIS. But I wanted to give you an example of what this looks like. So after we are all, all the internal organs are removed, after everything's been inspected, after final inspection by FSIS, we go into the blast cooler, blast chiller. And this is basically a big blast of cold air to really, get that carcass nice and cold. And then they go into their regular cooler where they might sit for a few hours or a few days, depending on the fabrication process that the plant has. One thing I want to mention, this process of going into the blast chiller, going into the cooler, is very, very, it happens pretty much in most plants that slaughter market hogs. If you're looking at a sow plant, say a plant that's culling cull sows, some of those plants will go ahead and forego this cooling process, and they will go ahead and take the meat off in chunks and basically put it into the product that they're making. Usually it's sausage, but that is called hot boning when you don't put the carcass into a cooler before you start basically the fabrication process. And again, a lot of that goes to sausage, and it's a lot of it is kind of just quality issues, or it's that specific plant's way of doing things. But if you're talking about market hogs, usually this is the process they go to. And after they've been in the cooler for a little while, they're going to go through the fabrication process. And this is basically just breaking that carcass down into smaller pieces. You'll see here, this is kind of the first part of the fabrication process. They'll split the carcass in half, and then they'll start, piecing it out. So most of the time, this will be kind of divided up into 3 big parts. And you'll see hams here, and you've got bellies here. And bellies are my favorite because they make bacon. And one thing we go back here, I want to point out, again, depending on your plant, a lot of the trimming of these bellies will be done by robots. Either, with basically they can take a picture of the belly, and they have certain specifications that belly needs to meet. And so basically the computer reads that, has its algorithm, and it makes a cut on the belly, and basically produces pretty standard bellies for, further processing into bacon. So again, just kind of goes to show the automation that we're looking at in some of these plants. But again, sometimes or many older plants don't have that automation, and someone, employee is physically doing that. So what do we get out of pigs? We get our whole muscle cut, those bellies. We also get trim. Those are the products that we usually see here in the United States on the grocery store shelves. You get your ham, you got your bacon. Trim might go to sausage or just ground pork, depending on, again, the plant's specifications. But, we also have a lot of carcass left after we get done with fabrication. So up to 30% of that live weight of each hog could go to byproduct. So you've got different kinds of byproducts. You have edible byproducts. Usually we don't see those on the grocery store shelves here in the United States. I think, personally, I think I've seen an increase, or maybe I've just become more cognizant of it. Maybe, I don't know. But I've noticed, some feet in the grocery stores and things like that. But, you've got your variety meats, your livers, kidneys, things like that. Your casings are, could be intestines. And a big one is gelatin. And I've recently, started to work with a candy company that's, concerned about animal welfare. And you say, well, why would a candy company be worried about animal welfare? But it's because they produce things that have gelatin in them, So these byproducts reach far and wide. And that's evidenced even more with the inedible byproducts. You've got your bones, you've got skin. Skin, has been used in xenografting. I'm not sure how often that's used anymore. You've got your glands that, have hormones and that are used quite often. Inedible lungs, most of that goes to rendering. Of course, like I said before, an inedible byproduct is blood, thrombin, fibrin, of course, plasma. And, we may not use a lot of these byproducts like we did in years past, but they have definitely been a scientific basis for the development of synthetic substitutes, which, have been argued as safer. But I think, it really goes to show that, we use the entire pig. And I guess not just in pork production, but in beef production as well. We use the entire pig. And I want to just touch a little bit on the plasma, especially the spray-dried plasma, because, the specific question was asked. So most of the time in the plant, that blood is collected and it is it's separated. And so basically the plasma is separated from the rest of the blood. And that is what is sold to an outside company. And the outside company will take it in liquid form, and it will go ahead and basically what happens is to spray dry it. They spray that plasma and expose it to hot air to evaporate the moisture that's associated with it. Dr. David Meeker, who will be on next week's webinar, will talk a little bit more about spray-dried plasma and kind of how it is handled. But I wanted to kind of show you the process first and, I guess, tune you up for next week. So we also have, products that go to rendering, things like those lungs, the hair that comes off in those tumblers, that will go to rendering. Rendered products are used to make pet food. They're used to make bone meal. They're used to make blood meal. On the beef side, we have tallow, I guess here too. And rendering, while it seems to be kind of an icky business, and it seems to be kind of like, why would we even bother with any of this stuff? It's all just kind of trash. It's really not. I mean, these products provide significant revenue for these companies. And, you also avoid the cost of disposal because, these are animal tissues and they need to be handled as such. You avoid the cost of disposal by rendering these products into something that's usable for another consumer. And, of course, the buzzword for the last probably 3-4 years now is sustainability. And, again, you use every single part of that carcass, and I think that's very, very important when you look at things from a sustainability standpoint. You decrease your costs and you increase your revenue. So what's more sustainable than that? This is just a graphic to show the number of pounds of byproducts that have been produced over the years. This is a little bit older data. I do apologize for that. But you see there was a significant spread between beef and pork and kind of narrowed the gap, but we're seeing that spread again here, at least as of 2010. But, if you look at the y-axis here, that's a lot of product. That's a lot of pounds. So, it's pretty significant. And where would this go if we didn't, sell it to, whoever would buy it, or we didn't render it and make it into other products? It would just be waste. And that's the last thing that we want to have. So that was kind of your tour of a packing plant. We can discuss a little bit more if you'd like in the presentation. I'm sorry, in the Q&A portion of the presentation. But I want to kind of focus in on really biosecurity and kind of the what ifs if we have foreign animal disease here in the United States. So right now, when we talk about biosecurity in a packing plant, we are very, very clean inside these plants, very clean. I mean, they have an entire shift dedicated to cleaning and disinfecting inside these plants. Most of the time, the actual process is plant dependent. A lot of times, these companies will bring in third party companies or sanitation companies that are not necessarily associated with the packing company itself, and they will come in and take that third shift or second shift if the plant only slaughters one shift, and they will come in every single day and do cleaning, and they will disinfect the entire plant. And it's not just, kind of a spray everything with water and then spray everything with quat. These machines are taken apart. Everything is cleaned every single day. Now, it's a little bit different when you talk about lairage in those pens that those pigs are housed in before they go up to the stunning area. Cleaning and disinfection in lairage is very, very plant dependent. It might include daily cleaning. It might include weekly cleaning. And a lot of times that cleaning is kind of a cold water rinse. Now, a cold water rinse is really good if you want to pre-clean a surface before you disinfect it. But right now, a lot of times that's what's used either at the end of the day or shift or at the end of the week. Disinfection is not necessarily done at every single plant in lairage. Sometimes plants will do it weekly. Some may not. Sometimes they will use chlorine, or they'll use those quaternary ammonium products. I apologize. But one thing that really needs to be noted about lairage is most of those surfaces are concrete, or maybe, some gates might be metal. But that concrete is very, very porous. I mean, just like any concrete, right? So that may cause a problem if we have an outbreak of foreign animal disease. We need to make sure that those surfaces are either, that something is applied to them so that they are not porous. Maybe you seal the surface, or we need to make sure that our disinfectant is working properly and getting into all of those pores. So that's something that we might want to think about talking about in the future exercise. And just disinfection in itself, what is required. So I think that's something that is kind of a conversation that we really need to have during our policy discussion. Somewhere maybe we can fill in some gaps. Something else that needs to be discussed when we talk about biosecurity in a packing plant, trucks and trailers. Cleaning and disinfection of trucks and trailers is really truck and truck driver dependent. Farms, production units may require that trucks come in cleaned and disinfected, but when they leave the plant, we do not know where that truck is going and if it is going to a wash, and definitely if it's not going to, or whether or not it's going to disinfection. Truck washes, they may be part of a plant. Some plants do have, bake bay, but not all of them. So truck washes, they might be part of a plant. They might be a public truck wash, and we need to understand where that water is going if it's a public wash. And, maybe these truck drivers go and they go to a public wash, or they're washed at, the wash at the plant. But, what about disinfection? And we talked a little bit about bake bays. Some plants have them. They're very, very few and far between. And again, I think this is going to be a gap here. We need to better understand cleaning and disinfection of trucks. Who is supposed to do it? The drivers. A lot of times they are the ones that own the truck, or they work for the company that owns the truck, or they just work for a company that schedules. But they are going to have to be on board with cleaning and disinfecting their trucks. We need to figure out where these trucks are going to be cleaned and disinfected. A lot of times plants do not have a truck wash associated with it. It's more likely that drivers are going to take their truck to a truck wash that is public rather than, go to, anywhere else. And again, some plants have bake bays, not all of them. Actually, not very many of them, let's say that. And then, if drivers do elect to go to a truck wash and do the cleaning and disinfection, who monitors that compliance? How do we know that it was done correctly and they are properly trained to do that cleaning and disinfection? So we also need to talk about tracing of trucks, backward and forward. It's pretty easy to trace where a truck came from when it's coming to a packing plant, but do you know where it's going? Is it going to, go pick up a load of weaned calves? A lot of trailers are used for, as dual purpose for calves and for pigs. Or are they going to another, pig farm? And of course, we're not just talking about livestock haulers. Any trucks that come out of that packing plant, we need to understand where they came from and where they're going. Another pretty important issue on biosecurity in a packing plant is employees, especially those employees that work in lairage. They are directly exposed to pigs every single day, and multiple pigs, I mean thousands of pigs. So, you know, if a foreign animal disease were to occur, how do we handle things like employee clothing, employee boots, lunch boxes? You know, those are checked every single time when they leave, but they're not disinfected, they're not cleaned. Vehicles, is there cross traffic? And are they taking anything home to their pigs at home? Do they have pigs at home that could potentially catch disease from their boots or from their clothing? And again, how do you know, is there compliance enforcement? Who monitors that? Things like that. Those are things that we really need to talk about when we're talking about biosecurity in a packing plant. One issue that's come up in various discussions about packing plants during a foreign animal disease event, water. Plants use a lot of water. And where does that water go? Many plants have a water treatment facility. They will treat the water with chlorine and then release it wherever they need to release it, or, you know, lagoon or wherever. But we need to understand what plants are treating water with. Some might be treating with chlorine, some might be treating with something else. Where does the water go after it's treated? Where is it discharged? And again, who monitors the compliance? You know, what are the records that we need to keep? Who's going to require those records, et cetera, et cetera. Another big issue with biosecurity and packing plants is tracing. So I think it's pretty easy with our tattoo system, our ID system, to monitor where product came from. Now, not necessarily everything will be traceable when you're talking about, say, a sow plant that accepts cull sows that have been through, you know, the slaughter channel. But for market hogs, usually it's pretty easy. However, the hard part might be, where did those trucks go? Where did products go? Where did vehicles go? Where did the livestock haulers go? If you've got contractors, you've got visitors on site, on, you know, any given time, where do they go after they leave the plant? You know, meat products, byproducts, if you don't have cross traffic between, you know, your final end product and your pigs coming in, might not be as hard, but it's still, you know, plants are set up differently. They may not have the ability to entirely eliminate that cross traffic. And I think we always need to consider reshipments of pigs, because some of these pigs come in and they don't meet specifications of the particular plant, and so they might be sent to, you know, a buyer station or some other place to go to a plant where that pig does meet specifications. And we really need to understand how those are traced, or how we can trace them. And this is just an example. You know, we talked a little bit about cross traffic, and I took some satellite images. You know, Google Earth is pretty handy sometimes. Sometimes it's not so handy. Sometimes it's kind of a pain. But I took some images just to kind of show you how different some of these facilities are, and what the difference is between, you know, where they sit in traffic. So this is a big interstate. This is kind of a crossroads here, but you'll see there's one entrance to this plant here, and there's kind of one here that's probably not used quite as much. So this is the plant here. You can see this is employee parking. It looks like your unloading docks are here. They might be loading docks. I can't see from the picture. It's kind of small. But you can see, you know, you've basically got this entrance and here, and then back here that doesn't really go anywhere, but that looks like it goes to the lagoon. But you'll see how this is set up. So you've got trailers back here, again, employee parking. And, you know, kind of try to take a photo image of this in your head, because it's very different from this facility. So you've got the facility here, you've got employee parking here, and you've got your roads here, You can come in here, or you can come in here, and employees can come here. So this is actually kind of nice because you've got your employees only leaving this way. They're not, going to have any cross traffic unless they come this way and cross traffic with trailers. I don't know where this road goes, but it's very, very different from the last plant that we saw set up differently. And then here we've got a plant that's set up, and your plant is here, but you've also got other further processing plants all around here, and they've got one road right down the middle here. And you can imagine how much cross traffic that might create in a situation where we may not want any cross traffic. So the way that the plants are set up is very, very important to understand, and it's very important to have a premises map before anything ever happens and really understand the traffic flow of these plants before anything like a foreign animal disease event ever happens here in the United States. So that's kind of an overview on the packing plant side and the industry side of how things kind of work, what kind of biosecurity is in place or maybe not in place, and what things we might want to consider in some of our subsequent discussions. Now, we'll talk a little bit about relevant authority, and I'm not going to get into a lot of specifics here because this is something that I think we should save for a pretty robust discussion, but I want to just kind of give an overview of the different agencies that the packing plant interacts with and what the priorities of those different agencies might be. So FSIS. FSIS is the Food Safety and Inspection Service. They are under the umbrella of USDA. They have jurisdiction over food safety, sanitation, humane handling. Their jurisdiction basically starts when the trucks enter the premises. Anything that's on the premises, FSIS has jurisdiction over. And it stops, I have stopped in quotation marks, when the trailer hauling product is sealed. It doesn't necessarily stop there. If there's a recall situation, obviously FSIS is going to step in and make sure that, see what they can do to make sure that product is accounted for if a recall is issued. But main focus is food safety. That is what they are concerned about. African swine fever, foot and mouth disease for that matter, they are not food safety concerns, but obviously they're animal health concerns. So that's where that's where APHIS comes in. And I'm sure you guys all know Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. They perform various activities that have to do with these packing plants. APHIS will issue permits for import-export. They will have regular inspections if they are issuing your permit. They may come in and do some sample collection in plants, especially for surveillance activities. And of course, because of what they do, their primary concern is animal health. And so they, excuse me, they work, and we'll see this in a subsequent slide, they will work with the states to ensure that we keep animal health at its tip top. They can issue things nationwide, things like stop movement orders, but we need to talk about what does that entail. I think the questions have come up already in discussions, and I think it'll probably be part of our policy discussion is if a nationwide stop movement order is issued, what happens to pigs in transport, pigs in lairage, disposition of product? And these questions are not necessarily all going to be answered by APHIS. The states are going to answer a lot of these questions as well. APHIS may be the authority that sends an FADD, but it could also be the state. A lot of times it depends on how APHIS and the state work together in that particular state. And of course, we have the state. 50 different states. We are the United States. We are not, we have different states have different regulations to follow, especially pertaining to animal health. And according to the Animal Health Protection Act, the state actually has primary jurisdiction in the event of a foreign animal disease. They should be well equipped to handle it. I know that a number of states that are pork producing states have already been working on, FAD preparedness and response. This is a top priority for them. The state will be the one to issue a quarantine, whether that be a quarantine of a pig production unit or a packing plant. The state will also be the one to issue permits. They will be the authority that determine whether or not product moves. And excuse me, some of you have had experience with Seneca Valley. Sometimes there is a little bit of confusion between, what agency might have what authority in certain circumstances. And I think that's a huge thing that we need to talk about in this policy discussion in January. We need to definitively outline, where authority is and where it might not be for various agencies, because the last thing we want to do is have, conflicting messages, especially when we're trying to, not only make sure that the disease does not spread, but we want to maintain continuity of business if at all possible. So, there will be a lot of moving parts if a foreign animal disease event happens, and we need to make sure that the state, APHIS, and FSIS, along with industry, all have a good understanding of, who's got what authority in what situation. Yep, and to go along those lines, communication between not just the agencies, but the agencies and industry is key. We need a method of communicating information between federal, state, and industry entities. You want to be able to share diagnostic information for the purposes of permitting. You also want to keep, confidential information confidential. You don't want it to be able to be FOIA'd. Freedom of Information Act. You don't want just anyone accessing things that might be relevant to either a producer or a packer's continuity of business. So I think this is another area that we can have a really robust discussion on how we can share information efficiently and confidentially. And the industry has made efforts, just like the states and APHIS has. At least within the Meat Institute, we have developed some guidance on foreign animal disease. The focus is really on the operations level because that's where everything is going to be implemented. We've got guidance on foreign animal disease investigations, and those are that guidance in particular is based on documents that come from each agency, FSIS and APHIS. We've got guidance on clinical signs that employees might notice in pigs and lairage, or even pigs, even carcasses that come by. We've also got a guidance on just being prepared for a foreign animal disease. Like I said, when we talked about those satellite images, just having an image like that and a map where you can kind of outline where traffic goes and where you might see problems with cross traffic can be very, very important if something happens in your facility. And of course, we've got a biosecurity guidance document, and it's really always a work in progress. It's always posted on our website for our members, but we will constantly update it based on new guidance that we've received either from, new science or, updates from each agency, whether that be APHIS or FSIS. And obviously, participation in these African swine fever exercises, I think that's very, very helpful. I think a lot of these discussions bring about issues that people may or may not have thought of already. So I think, just going through the motions and thinking, really critically thinking about some of the things you may or may not have to do during a foreign animal disease event is very, very important. And I think that's why we really need to have these ASF exercises on the production side and on the packer side. This is just an example of one of our guidance documents on foreign animal disease investigation. And it outlines basically what FSIS and what APHIS recommend and put it into, kind of an easy to read document that anyone can access that our members can access. Obviously, we need to keep up on that biosecurity guidance, or, maybe it should be a biocontainment guidance. If you find it in a slaughter facility, you want to keep it in the slaughter facility. Excuse me. If the slaughter facility is in an affected zone, or if it is, that premise, that infected premise, we need to do whatever we can to prevent the spread of infection to unaffected zones. Again, we talked about that premises map. Where's your line of separation? Outline, where your flow of people, of animals, of products, where that is, and make sure that, you address anything like cross-contamination. Again, on biosecurity, we need to talk about trucks, employees, lairage, vehicles, cleaning and disinfection of all of those things, and, of course, tracing, not just backwards, but especially in a packing plant, tracing forward. So the industry kind of has a to-do list, obviously we're going to work together with various agencies to make sure that we, are able to check things off of this list. I think one of the biggest things that packers can do is develop a biosecurity or even a biocontainment plan at the plant and for those trucks that are hauling pigs into the plant. We need cleaning and disinfection protocols specific for a foreign animal disease event. We've got cleaning and disinfection protocols for what Patrick Webb says peacetime, but we need to probably take a step further and figure out what we would do if we've got a foreign animal disease event. And, of course, one thing that we need to address is the resales or the reshipment. Those pigs that come in, they don't meet specifications, and they go to a collection point after they've been at the packing plant. How do we handle those and tracing those and making sure that they're not spreading disease?
Okay, we don't have any other questions in the chat, but as a reminder, watch your email. You will get an announcement about Dr. Meeker's webinar, and we also have a communications webinar in the system that is also going to be on December 8th. So if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end the session, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and have a great afternoon.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.